She laughed louder than she had in weeks. Her glass shimmered in the neon light, and for a second, I thought maybe I was wrong about everything. Maybe it really was just a party. Just a room full of people and music and high-end appetizers I couldn't pronounce. Then I saw the note on her bag. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. The bag, that forest green one she only brought out when she wanted to impress, had been slung neatly over the arm of the chair. But now, the flap was lifted. A folded square of matte black paper was half-tucked beneath the strap, like someone had slid it there quietly. On purpose. I reached for it with 2 fingers. Unfolded it slowly, hands shaking in rhythm with the bass pounding from the speakers. The words inside weren't long. Just 6 of them, written in sharp silver ink. Don't follow her yet, rooftop. The air in my lungs turned thick. I looked around. She wasn't where she had been, no longer by the dessert table, no longer sipping her wine and talking to that redhead in the velvet jacket. She had vanished. I stood completely still. The music, the chatter, the glittering noise of it all, it faded into a single sound, my heartbeat in my ears. I didn't ask questions. I didn't look for help. I headed for the stairs. Each floor I climbed, I imagined her sitting alone under string lights, maybe FaceTiming her sister, maybe needing fresh air. I clung to that version of reality like a lifeline. But it snapped the moment I opened the rooftop door. The first thing I saw was her heels. Off her feet. One lying on its side, one still upright. The second thing I saw was her hair, pulled back now, as she sat on a low couch beside him. Not a him. The him. The man I'd pretended didn't exist. The one whose name I'd never dared say out loud. He had his arm draped behind her like it belonged there. She was holding a drink I hadn't seen her order. She was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years, not since before we had shared our last New Year's kiss in silence. She leaned into his chest. He whispered something. She laughed. And I finally knew what it sounded like when something inside you dies quietly. I didn't step forward. I didn't say her name. I just stood there, 1 foot barely inside the rooftop doorway, as the wind caught the hem of her dress and made it ripple like a flag that didn't belong to me anymore. They didn't notice me. Not yet. They were too wrapped in each other, too sure the world was down below, too certain no one had followed. That made sense now. The note wasn't a warning. It was an invitation. Someone wanted me to see this. I backed away before I could make a sound. The door clicked gently behind me, and I leaned against the wall of the stairwell, heart slamming through my ribs. My palms were wet. I remember wiping them on my jeans over and over like I could rub the moment out of existence. But it was still there. Every second of it. Every detail branded into memory. I wanted to go home. I wanted to leave the building, walk to the car, sit in the driver's seat and breathe until I could forget what I saw. But then a thought hit me so fast and so hard it nearly knocked me off balance. If she's up here with him, who left the note? That question pulled me away from panic and shoved me towards something colder, something more alert. I went back down 2 flights and stepped quietly into the hallway. The party noise was louder now. Laughter, clinking glasses, that same pop song about forgetting someone's name. The hallway opened into the main living space, but I didn't rejoin the crowd. I stayed hidden, watching. And then I saw him. Not him from the rooftop, someone else. Someone I didn't know. Mid-40s, navy suit, pale blue tie. He was leaning casually against the kitchen island, sipping from a clear glass and scanning the room. His eyes weren't moving like someone enjoying a party. They were searching, measuring, waiting for something. I knew it instantly. He had written the note. There was a sharpness to him, like he wasn't here to celebrate anything. He was standing apart from everyone, as if he was only pretending to belong. And then, in the space of 5 seconds, he looked directly at me, across the crowd, through the dim light, and nodded once. Not a friendly nod. Not a polite one. It was the kind of nod someone gives you when they've done their part, and now it's your move. I stepped out, heart still hammering, and made my way toward him through the crowd. I was maybe 10 feet away when someone grabbed my arm, Rowan, the host, Della's newly liberated friend. She smiled way too brightly and said, "Hey, you okay? You look pale." I blinked. "Yeah, just needed air. Della's around here somewhere," she said with a wink. "She said she wanted to introduce you to some of her networking buddies. Whatever that means." I smiled politely, pulled my arm free, and turned, but the man was gone. No glass. No note. No trace he had ever been there at all. I scanned the room 3 times. Nothing. He had vanished as quietly as he appeared. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't dealing with just a betrayal. Something bigger was happening. Something planned. Someone wanted me to see what she was doing. But why? I didn't go back upstairs. Not yet. I stood in the corner of that too-perfect apartment, barely breathing, trying to make sense of what was unraveling around me. A week ago, I thought I had a distant wife, a disconnected routine, maybe even a marriage running low on gas. But now? Now it felt like I'd stumbled into a script I wasn't supposed to read, and someone had handed me the pin halfway through. Who was that man on the rooftop with Della? And more urgently, who was the man who left me the note? I pulled out my phone. My hands were still shaking, but I opened the camera and scrolled back through photos from earlier. I'd taken one when we arrived, Della smiling in the passenger seat, sunlight flashing through her earrings. That same smile she gave me before walking inside and kissing another man an hour later. The image made my chest cave in. But I wasn't looking at her. I was looking behind her, at the man walking into the building as we parked. Navy suit, pale blue tie. The man from the kitchen. He'd arrived before us, which meant he was already planning something before I even knew there was something to uncover. That chilled me more than anything. It wasn't just that Della was hiding something. Someone else was watching her and using me to expose it. I locked my phone and stepped into the hallway again. This time, I wasn't trying to play detective. I wasn't even thinking. I was just walking, reacting. I didn't want to go back to the party, but I couldn't go home either. I ended up near the coat closet by the front door, where no one was standing. It was quiet there, dimly lit, away from the noise. I reached for my jacket out of reflex, then froze. There was a phone in the pocket. Not mine. Smaller, older, scuffed on the corners. It had been slipped in, zipped into the inside lining of my coat, the one I hadn't worn since entering. I looked around. No one near me. No one even watching. I pulled it out and turned it on. No passcode. It opened straight to the gallery. My stomach dropped. There were 6 videos. No names. No titles. Just thumbnails and timestamps. The most recent one was from earlier that night, just 30 minutes ago. I tapped it. The screen filled with the rooftop. Same furniture. Same string lights. Della. But this time, the man's face was visible. And he was saying things I had never heard her say, things she had never said to me. Promises. Jokes. Familiar little phrases like, our place, and next time, don't make me wait so long. She giggled in the middle of it, touched his hand, called him Sebastian. And then, as he leaned in to kiss her again, she said something that made my vision blur. He's so clueless tonight. He doesn't suspect a thing. The kiss landed seconds later. I locked the phone and felt something crack silently behind my eyes. Not a scream, not even a shout, just silence. A silence that felt irreversible. Someone had filmed that. Someone wanted me to see it. And I had the sinking sense that this wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was bait. And I had just taken it. I didn't know how long I stood there holding that burner phone, but by the time I slipped it back into my coat, my fingertips were numb. The laughter from the party was still echoing faintly, but it sounded like it was coming from underwater. Everything normal, voices, music, footsteps, had been flattened under the weight of what I just saw. But what bothered me the most wasn't the kiss. It was the smirk on her face right after. I had seen Della angry, tired, frustrated, even cold. But this expression on the screen was different. That smirk wasn't guilt. It wasn't even excitement. It was certainty, confidence. Like she had already rolled the dice and she knew they'd land in her favor. And yet someone had been watching, recording, planning. For my sake or for theirs? I needed answers. I went back to the rooftop, not through the stairs this time, but through the elevator behind the guest bathrooms. Slower, quieter. The kind of route you take when you don't want to be noticed. When the doors opened, the air hit me first. Colder than before. The rooftop was nearly empty now. Only one couple remained in the far corner, seated close but not that close. Neither was Della. She was gone. I scanned the perimeter, walked to where she'd been sitting earlier. No heels. No glasses. No sign of Sebastian either. Just 2 warm dents in the cushion and a faint perfume that twisted my stomach. I checked my phone. No texts. Nothing missed. I tried calling hers straight to voicemail. I called again. Same result. She had either turned it off or blocked me mid-party. I almost laughed. It was so absurd I wanted to believe I was hallucinating the whole night. But I had the phone. I had the video. And now, I had an idea. I took the elevator back down, but instead of returning to the main party, I turned left into the private hallway, the one leading toward the security office. Most people didn't even notice it. I only knew it existed because Rowan had posted a behind-the-scenes Instagram video during move-in showing off the building's tight security. I walked like I belonged there. Head up, pace even. When I reached the door marked staff only, I knocked twice and waited. Nothing. I knocked again. This time, it opened. Not by a guard. Not by staff. By the man in the navy suit. He didn't look surprised. Not even a little. He just stepped aside and motioned me in with 2 fingers like we were meeting for a planned appointment. "Who are you?" I asked, almost whispering, because suddenly my voice didn't feel like it belonged in my own throat. He locked the door behind us, then reached into the drawer by the wall and tossed something onto the counter. Another phone. This one was newer. Clean. Charged. "You'll want to watch this next," he said calmly. "But I suggest you sit down first." I didn't. I tapped the screen, slid to the only video file. It was Della again, but not from tonight. This was from 3 weeks ago. Same man. Same rooftop. Same smirk. Only this time, she was the one filming. And halfway through the clip, she turned the camera toward herself, blew a kiss at the lens, and said, "Just imagine his face when he finally figures it out." I'm betting tears first, then silence. I stopped the video. I looked at the man. He still hadn't blinked. Still hadn't smiled. "What is this?" I asked. "Why are you giving this to me?" He stepped closer, just enough that I could smell the bitterness of cheap whiskey on his breath. "Because you're not the only one she's lied to," he said. "But you are the only one dumb enough to still think she's just having an affair." I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. My brain was still trying to wrap itself around what this man just said. She wasn't just cheating. There was something else. Something layered beneath the lies, beneath the betrayal. A second betrayal, hiding behind the first. She lied to me. She used me, I finally managed to say, barely above a whisper. "But you're telling me she did the same to you?" The man, still unnamed, leaned back against the desk like he had all night to wait. "No, she didn't lie to me. She destroyed something I built, piece by piece, quietly. And you were just collateral." His words dropped like weights, but I didn't fully understand them. Not yet. He handed me a folded piece of paper. No envelope. Just a single typed sentence. "This wasn't supposed to happen at the party." I turned it over. Nothing on the back. "What does this mean?" He gave me the smallest shrug, then walked over to a shelf behind him and pulled down a box. It was plain, gray, and locked with a 3-digit combination. I watched as he dialed in the code without hesitation. The lid popped open. Inside was a stack of photographs. Dozens. He spread them out across the desk. My stomach flipped. There was Della smiling in every single one. Different locations. Different outfits. Different men. Same expression. Not guilt. Not shame. Enjoyment. Thrill. I stared at the photos like they were lies, as if by denying their reality, I could keep some small thread of my own reality from snapping completely. Some were clearly staged. Others caught her mid-laugh, mid-glance. A few were disturbingly close. Private moments that felt like I wasn't just looking at betrayal, I was looking at someone who had been living an entirely separate life I knew nothing about. "She targets people," the man said, almost clinically. "Men with access. Men who don't ask the right questions. Men like you." "Access to what?" I asked, heart pounding harder now. He tilted his head slightly. "That's what I was hoping you could help me figure out." Now I was shaking again. "I don't know anything." He looked at me for a long time. Not angry. Just evaluating. "You work in IT logistics, right? Remote access to freight systems. Warehousing networks." "Yes, so?" "So she's been planning events with 2 men in your company's vendor chain, one in Florida, one in Ohio, and a third one who was arrested 2 months ago for data skimming." No, she would never." I caught myself mid-sentence. The same reflex I'd used for years, standing up for her, believing her. But now, I couldn't finish the lie. The man watched me swallow the denial like he'd seen it happen before. "She's using relationships to get information. Access codes. Passwords. Facility schematics. And she's good at it because she plays long games. Years, sometimes." I sat down. Hard. My knees weren't going to hold me anymore. He continued. "At some point, she decided you were more useful as an access point than a husband. But she got sloppy. Someone, not me, left you that note tonight. Someone who didn't want to wait anymore. So this is what? Industrial sabotage? Corporate theft?" The man smiled faintly. "Call it what you want. All I know is she's not just unfaithful. She's a professional manipulator. And you're either a threat now or a liability." The word liability hit harder than it should have. I looked back at the photographs. In one, she was wearing the same dress from tonight, the navy silk one she claimed she only kept for sentimental reasons. The timestamp? A week ago. Different rooftop. Same man. Same lips on hers. The man folded the photos back into the box and locked it again. I finally asked the question I was terrified to know the answer to. Why are you helping me? He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the door for a long moment. Then, because someone helped me once. And if I had listened, I wouldn't have lost everything. I stood slowly. Where is she now? He checked his watch. If she's following the pattern, probably preparing the next phase. You'll know soon. I turned to leave, head spinning, body cold. Before I reached the door, he added, she's going to pretend nothing happened. She'll walk up to you like she always does, kiss you, ask you if you enjoyed the party. And if you say yes, she wins again. I stepped out into the hallway, pulse drumming. And less than 15 seconds later, I heard her voice behind me. Corbin? Hey, there you are. I was looking everywhere for you. Just like he said. I turned slowly. She was standing at the end of the hall like nothing was wrong, like the night hadn't peeled itself open to reveal something rotten underneath. Della's dress was perfectly smooth, makeup untouched, that soft party smile frozen in place. The same one she used at weddings, brunches, and when she wanted to steer me away from asking uncomfortable questions. Her eyes flicked to mine for a half second. If she noticed the storm inside me, she didn't show it. Babe, she said, walking over and casually brushing her hand against my arm. I've been looking all over. Are you okay? I didn't answer. She tried to soften her tone. Did something happen? Still nothing. Then she leaned closer, voice lower. Was it the rooftop? Did you? That was it. Her mistake. I never said anything about the rooftop. Her eyes widened just slightly, too fast for most people to catch. But I caught it. That flicker, the half-second lag between her brain and her mouth. That moment of realizing she'd revealed something she wasn't supposed to know. I saw everything, I said flat. Not angry, not loud, just done. To her credit, she didn't gasp or cry or even deny it. Instead, she exhaled through her nose like I'd just ruined a nice evening by being inconveniently observant. Okay, she said. So let's talk. But not here. Let's go somewhere quiet. No. Her eyebrows rose. She wasn't used to hearing that from me, especially not with that kind of tone. She waited a beat, then folded her arms, dropped the act. Fine. You want it raw? You want the truth? I'll give it to you. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Please. She laughed once, short, sharp. It wasn't supposed to go this far. You were just supposed to be stable. That's what I told them. You weren't the ambitious one. You weren't greedy. You were safe. Predictable. You liked sandwiches and spreadsheets and working late for people who never remembered your birthday. You were the guy no one would ever suspect. I blinked. Suspect of what? Of giving someone access, she said. Of leaving a login screen open. Of trusting your wife with your laptop. Corbin, you hand me your devices like they're napkins. So that's it. That's what I am to you. A gate key. She looked at me, and that's when I realized she wasn't angry. She was annoyed. Like I had interrupted her momentum. No, she said. You were also comfort. You were quiet. And for a long time, that was enough. I swallowed hard. And the man on the rooftop? She tilted her head, smiled faintly. Sebastian? He's not even the important one. He's the placeholder. The distraction. You were supposed to focus on him. That answer was worse than anything I had prepared for. I stared at her. So how many were there? 2, 5, 10. She didn't blink. That depends. Do you mean physically? Emotionally? Logistically? I actually laughed, bitter and stunned. You're insane. No, she said. I'm efficient. You just think that's the same thing. She stepped closer, her voice lowering into a tone that made my skin crawl, soft, persuasive, like she was trying to negotiate her way through a hostage situation. But listen, you're not in trouble. Not yet. If you keep your head down, act confused, let this blow over, you'll be fine. We can still make this work. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Make this work? I repeated. What does that even mean? It means, she said, placing her hand back on my arm like it was still hers to touch, that we don't have to burn everything down. I'll say you had no idea. I'll say you're innocent. We'll move somewhere new. I'll make it up to you. Make what up to me? She looked me dead in the eye. Everything. And right then, I realized something that chilled me to the core. She wasn't afraid of getting caught. She was afraid of losing control. I stepped back from her. Just enough. Just far enough that she'd feel it. The physical distance, the shift, subtle, but unmistakable. Her hand dropped to her side. She felt it. And for the first time that night, I saw something flicker across her face that wasn't confidence or cruelty. It was fear. Not of exposure, but of irrelevance. She knew she had no more control over the room, over me, over the narrative she had been scripting for years like a stage play. The curtain was coming down, and I wasn't playing my part anymore. You really believe I'll just lie down and stay quiet? I asked. You think you can talk your way out of this with a smile and a relocation plan? She folded her arms, shifting from charming to corporate in a blink. Yes, because you're not like me. You don't do conflict. You don't act without approval. You think everything has to be fair and clear, and she waved her hand dismissively. Ethical. And you think that's weakness? I asked. I know it is, she said. And there it was. Her true face, finally unmasked, not the flirty woman, not the devoted wife, not the tearful manipulator. Just calculation. Pure, clinical, soulless calculation. But the thing about people like her is this. They forget the quiet ones take notes. While she was out there planning schemes, making her moves, working every angle like she was the only one with a playbook, I had been collecting every moment, every line, every omission. I had more than proof now. I had clarity. I'm going to the police, I said simply. She rolled her eyes. And say what? That your wife cheated? That she made you cry at a party? That she flirted her way into a few files? Corbin, they'll laugh you out of the building. That's where you're wrong, I said. Because I'm not the only one. And you didn't notice how many people stopped laughing tonight. Her face twitched. Just slightly. But I saw it. A crack in the glass. There are recordings, I added. Notes. Witnesses. I've already backed it up to a drive that isn't in this city. And the man in the navy suit? He's not done yet. Neither am I. Silence stretched between us. Then she said, barely audible, you weren't supposed to meet him. Yeah, I said. And you weren't supposed to enjoy ruining me, either. She stared at me like she was trying to decide whether to threaten me or seduce me one last time. Instead, she said the most terrifying thing I'd heard from her all night. Corbin, I'm not the worst one in this. Not even close. What does that mean? I asked. But she just stepped past me, heels clicking softly on the marble floor, the silk of her dress swaying like she was walking off stage. No rush. No goodbye. No closure. Just the sound of a door closing behind her. I didn't follow. I went the other way. Back to the stairwell. Down 2 flights. Straight to the service elevator. And waiting at the bottom, just outside the delivery entrance, was a man in a black coat. Not the one from earlier. Taller. Broader. Holding a phone I hadn't seen before. He handed it to me silently. The screen lit up. A video. This one was different. Not Della. Not me. Not even tonight. But it was still connected. I knew it before I even pressed play. I looked up at him. What is this? His response was so quiet I barely heard it. It's the part she never told anyone. Not even you. I held the phone in my hands, cold and trembling, while the man in the black coat stood silently in front of me like a monument. No words. No urgency. Just expectation. The kind of expectation you only feel when someone knows something that could split your life into before and after. I pressed play. The video was grainy but clear enough. A small, windowless room. A hidden camera. A long table with 3 people sitting around it. One of them was Della, but not the version I knew. This was her before the careful makeup, before the soft lies and practiced smiles. She looked younger, hardened, dangerous. Her voice was clipped, controlled. She was giving orders, not requests, not discussions. Orders. On the table were printed files, maps, names, faces. And one of those faces was mine. The breath left my lungs. My name was mentioned. A timeline. A role. Me not as a husband, not even as a target, but as a piece. A step on a ladder. An asset for a bigger plan I hadn't even known existed. And then the video cut out. I stood there for a full minute, the screen dark in my hand, processing what it meant to be loved for utility, not for who you are. What is this group? I asked quietly. The man in the black coat finally spoke. Gone. Dissolved. Della was one of the last. She kept going long after the others stopped. Out of greed. Out of ego. Maybe even out of habit. But you were her final link. And now, she's burned. Exposed. And you have everything she wanted: credibility, proof, a clean trail. If you hand this over, she's finished. I stared at the phone. The image of her walking away from me just hours ago flashed again, the sway of her dress, the fake calm, the belief that I'd fold and vanish. But she was wrong. I didn't fold. Instead, I walked straight into the nearest precinct the next morning. I gave them everything: the burner phones, the copied files, the names I had written down after reviewing every video. And I gave a sworn statement that, according to the detective's words, opened several very old and very dangerous cases. There was no need to dramatize. The truth was shocking enough. Della didn't return home. She didn't call. She didn't fight back. She ran. But this time, she didn't disappear into mystery. They found her within 72 hours. She was trying to fly out under someone else's name. She didn't resist arrest, just stared straight ahead like the world finally stopped bending to her will. When they let me know, I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled, the kind of breath that had been stuck in my chest for years. I moved out a week later, sold the house, deleted every photo, donated the dress, kept the dog. I changed my number, found a new apartment across the city, smaller, but brighter, quieter. Some nights, I still wonder when it really started, when she first decided I was no longer a person, but a password in human form. But I stopped chasing the answer. Some puzzles aren't worth solving. The man in the Navy suit never contacted me again. But 2 weeks after I testified, I received a plain envelope in my mailbox. No name, no address. Inside, a single photo of me, sitting alone at the party, looking down at her bag, seconds before I found the note. On the back, a handwritten message. You saw her. Now see yourself. I don't know who left it, but they were right. Because when I really looked at myself, not just in the mirror, but inside, I didn't see a man who had been broken. I saw a man who had survived. And that was the first time in years I realized I wasn't just somebody's husband. I was finally myself.